right ahead of me wearing my best pack 2, and then right ahead of him wearing the double barrel. And then in between them was another guy wearing a competitor's pack. And that guy in between them looked over at both of them. And our packs are pretty obvious because you have these big old bottles on your back. And that guy went over to the first guy with the BP2 and said, "Hey, man, do you like that pack?" And again, I just get to listen. And I mean, I felt like I don't know, felt like some, like we were talking about earlier, I felt like a creepy dude in the basement there. I was like, I'm just listening in. And the guy's like, "Dude, this thing," he's like, "You know what? I didn't know what I'd think about it because it's such a different look and fit. But he's like, I love this thing. I bought it 2 years ago. I've been running with it nonstop, and it's just freaking amazing." And then the guy in front of him is like, "Yeah, dude, nice pack." He's like, "Yeah, this thing's amazing. You should try it. It's totally weird. Once you get used to it, it's freaking amazing." And I was just like, I went up to him afterwards, both. I'm like, "Hey, I just want to say I love you both. This is awesome." But that, to me, it's never got old. It's the same level of excitement every single time I see someone in the wild with one of our packs.
That is Orange Mud founder Josh Sprague. This week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Friends, welcome back to another episode here of the Do It For Yourself podcast. Thank you so much for coming back, checking in with me, sharing some time, and enjoying another interview here on the podcast. This week, my guest is the founder and creator of Orange Mud, Josh Sprague. And Josh had actually reached out to me to be on the Do It For Yourself podcast. And I've had people reach out to me in the past before, and I'm going for a very specific theme across all of these episodes, and I am looking for someone who is doing it for themselves. So that means we've had this talk before, but that means that you are doing something that you have always wanted to do. You are doing something that you've had this burning desire, this passion to build, to conquer, to create, to just do it for yourself. And I've actually turned people away for coming on the show because I felt like they didn't fit that bill. So when Josh reached out, I responded and I said, I would love to learn a little bit more about your story. He sent me all kinds of stuff, which is fantastic. I had a bunch of stuff that I could read about Josh's story, how he created this company, Orange Mud, how he came up with the idea. And that was exactly what I was looking for. I've had other people reach out to me and they just copy and paste this generic, bio. "Oh, I'm so-and-so. I've done this race. I've done that race. Here's my results." And that's not what I'm looking for. So first of all, thanks very much to Josh for including such great information for me and really showing me how you are doing it for yourself. In this interview, we really take a deep dive into the launch of Orange Mud. And Orange Mud is known for their hydration packs. That's really what they're probably most well known for. They have a hydration pack that kind of sits up high on your back, right in between your shoulder blades. And the focus when it first launched was actually for triathletes, and it has since branched off into really the ultra marathon, 50K, 100K, 50 miler kind of, trail running community. And so I get a glimpse into what it was like coming up with this idea, how Josh came up with this idea, what he did for the initial prototype, and how he built that in his garage and then took that and launched it, into this full-blown company that he is running now. And I think, one of my favorite parts of the interview was when we took a really deep look into what it was like when he left his full-time job to take on Orange Mud full time instead of as a side hustle. So that was really interesting to hear kind of what was going on in his head at that point in time. But I don't want to give too much away. I will let Josh do the rest of the storytelling here, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Without further ado, here's my interview with Josh Sprague. Sweet. All right. So you ready?
Booger picking away.
Well, then I take it you're ready to get going.
Yeah, sure, man. Let's do it.
Just so you know, I might leave that in.
Yeah, that's all right.
So I'm joined by Josh, and Josh is an endurance athlete. He's the CEO of Orange Mud and was actually voted one of the top 5 emerging entrepreneurs in 2015. And Josh launched this company, Orange Mud, to solve an issue that he was having with hydration packs in particular during some of the long training sessions, especially on the run for Ironman training. So we're going to dive very deep into Josh's story of coming up with a prototype and launching this product, and how he really came up with the idea, and how I'm sure, as we were talking beforehand, it started as a side hustle and, has since morphed into possibly something much more than it was intended to be when it was first brought into fruition. So, Josh, I want to say thank you very much for jumping on with me tonight and taking the time to dive deep into your story with me on this podcast.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
So, this all stemmed from adventure racing, and you have always had the adventure bug, and that was from growing up in the country. So tell me a little bit about some of the things and what it was like growing up in the country.
Yeah, it was awesome is what it was. But yeah, it's a lot of times it's what you don't know as a kid. I think often shapes you as you get older, and you don't understand it until you get older sometimes. At least I know I wasn't smart enough to figure it out. But yeah, where I grew up, we were out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and in eastern Kansas, and my closest neighbors, like my friends that I went to school with, the closest was 3 miles across the pasture to him. It was like 6 miles away. It's actually 2 buddies that lived fairly close to each other by the road, and so really going to see them wasn't exactly an option. And then even though the phones were structured there, you couldn't really call them. It was long distance, and you're rewinding 30 years ago. That was like a $10 phone call for 15 minutes or whatever it was back then. So yeah, it really got me to go outside and constantly explore and living where I did. The woods were all around us. So in between fishing and hiking and hunting and just exploring and looking for bugs and lizards and snakes and crawdads and all that sort of stuff, it was just the normal thing that we did. So it was something I didn't even really think about, but otherwise there wasn't really a whole lot of TV to watch because we had 4 television channels since we didn't have any cable or anything, and it made for a simple life, but yet I think way more valuable than what I think. Like I look at my kids, I try to do all I can, obviously, to get them the same emulsion into the outdoors, but it's hard to do what is natural when you live in a country environment like that.
Yeah, and so I'm sure you living out there, you probably had to kind of come up with some of your own ideas on how to have fun and things to do with your friends. So tell me about some of your favorite memories or some pivotal moments for you that kind of shaped and formed this passion for adventure.
Yeah, so we did. We had a lot of fun things. I mean, shoot, some of the most fun things were just because you had to figure it out. Like if your car broke down, you had to figure out how to make something work so you could get it to town to get it fixed. But yeah, some of my most fun ones, we had a group of us in high school, and a lot of us, three of the four of us, had known each other since we were, I don't know, 4, 5, and everybody called us the fearsome foursome because we always did all kinds of stupid things together, and we were just known as kind of, I don't know, just we always loved adventure. So one day we went out, we built it was a snow day for school, and my buddy Travis, he came over in his piece of crap Dodge Duster that he had a steel spike tire and one in the rear, and he thought, well, this should work out well with all the ice and whatnot. I should be able to get around all right. And so I took a piece of barn tin and some 2x4s, and I built a bobsled out of barn tin 2x4s and some baling wire and a log chain, and it worked surprisingly well. Travis probably got us up to maybe 40 50 miles an hour on the gravel roads and was slinging us around the roads, and it was just an absolute blast. In hindsight, it probably wasn't very intelligent, and I'm really amazed nobody got drastically hurt. I had to grab his sister and like barrel roll off going 40 miles an hour into a gravel pile when we were flying down one of the roads, even, but because we were getting ready to hit a steel or a cement bridge. But it really wasn't like a real threatening thing. It's just, it was kind of in the plans, I guess. But yeah, so that was one of my fun ones. And I tell you, one of the other ones I think that really sparked an enormous amount of adventure, and even my first backpack design, in all reality, we the four of us, we put together all the money we had when I was, I believe, a freshman in high school. And mind you, in Kansas, you could get your driver's license when you were 14, up until maybe 15 years ago. So, 14 years old, we drove to town, and with all the money we had, it was $58 and change. Like I think it was 58.86 that we had, and we bought 150 yards of 3/8 inch stainless steel braided cable and some U-bolt clamps, and then we went back to my buddy Travis's. And in his pasture, he had a junk pile. We went in there. We found an old pulley and some galvanized steel, and he welded up this T-handle and put this old pulley on it. And then we went back to my place, and I pounded some fence posts in the top side of our dam on the west side of the pond. And then we ran the cable from the fence post on one side up through the crotch of a cottonwood tree up high, and then down to the back end of this old farm truck we had, this old Ford F-250, and we pulled the cable real tight. It was just this whole project we all did. And pulled the cable real tight, strung the cable or the pulley and T-bar handle up on it, and climbed up in the tree. And about 9 o'clock, it was in the dark. I still have the pictures of this. My dad took of us. We all got down in our underwear because it was cold, and we didn't really know how long we'd last in there. We didn't even know if this thing was going to work. And we all ended up going off in our underwear and bombing into the pond and just jumping off it and doing flips, and that system to this day is still over my dad's pond, and we have hauled it, and I don't even know how many trips, tubing down rivers and just going wherever. We'd string it up everywhere, and it definitely was an integral part of an enormous amount of adventures all through and a little bit beyond high school. Well, so good times.
And not only the adventure, but also the idea and craftsmanship and seeing something through to the end, which we're going to get into for sure. So it seems like that was something that you had early on as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just, it's just kind of what you did. I growing up, I was in 4-H, and I raised pigs for 4-H, and I did geology projects, and I made wood projects. I had wood shop in school, and it's part of like the nature back there where, my dad, he built our house from scratch. He wasn't a home builder, but he wanted to build one, so he built a big old log cabin, and I helped him not necessarily build then because I was like 3 to 5 years old, but I helped him subsequently build. We had a little guest cabin we built. I built a log 2-story fort and back in the woods behind our house that he and I built together, and out of rough cut, pine logs, and you just learn to be crafty, and you learn that you can do anything. Everybody can do anything. It's just a matter you got to set your mind to it. But I think a lot of times people discount their own abilities just because they just don't have maybe formal training. But the way we saw it is like, you got nothing else to lose. You might as well try it and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, living in such a small rural area, how did you stumble upon and discover adventure racing, because it's even now today, I mean, it's gotten much bigger, but at the time, I'm sure there weren't many adventure races going on at all. So how did you find that, and when was that?
Yeah, so that was definitely down the road from Kansas. My uncle offered me a job years ago, in 1999 in September that year, and I just on a whim, I was like, I loved Kansas. I was the Uber country boy. I wore camouflage all the time and everything, and all my friends thought I was crazy when all of a sudden I was like, hey, I'm going to take a job in Arizona and Phoenix, and they're like, you're going to do what? So I did. I took the job, and my uncle offered it to me. I didn't even quite understand what I was going to be doing for him. For example, it was just kind of it's very unique, and so that's what took me to AZ. And in living out there, I was mountain biking in Kansas, and I ran and stuff, not like super serious, but when I got to Arizona, I loved mountain biking, but I wanted to do more. And I heard of this race called the Balance Bar Sprint in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica. And or that one I think was actually in the Orange County area, and I just thought it sounded so cool. It's a mix of run, bike, kayak, 3-man team, and you're going to do this for about 6 hours. And I thought, man, that sounds awesome. That's a lot more adventurous than just mountain biking. And so yeah, I went on this. It's called Southern California Adventure Racing Buddies. It was this old Yahoo News group. I don't even know if it's still around. And I just posted in there, hey, I'd love to get a team together and go do this. And I found these 2 random guys, and we met up, and we went out, and we actually did really well. I think we got like 35th or something out of 500 teams. And we were like, hey, you know what? We're actually pretty good at this. Maybe we can actually do more and do some of the 24 hours and multi-day events. And so next thing you know, we're growing our team, and I end up racing with them on their team, and because they lived in California, I lived in Arizona, and we just like built out this kind of like 10-person group of people that would jump in and jump out of teams depending on which state and what difficulty of race we were in, and it just took off. It was just kind of totally on a whim, and yeah, it just became part of my lifestyle.
And I'm sorry, just to step back for a second. Did you say that it was a sprint race that would take up to 6 hours? Because for the triathletes that are listening to this, they're like, wait a minute, a sprint race, 6 hours. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, so in the adventure race world, which there's barely any of it left, it kind of had a big explosion, and it's like it got really popular, and then it kind of died off. But in the adventure race world, sprints is, for the most part, it's kind of like that 8 to 10 hours and under. Generally the 4 to 6 is probably the norm. And then, you get in like the 12-hour format, and that's kind of like the mid, I guess. And then the 24-hour is a pretty good standard, like it's a good race. It's not a sprint, but it's not a multi-day. It's not an expedition. And then an expedition is when you cross into, they have some multi-days, like 2 or 3 days. And then expedition, you go into like the 5 to 14-day races. So there's kind of these different levels that you get into, and once you get into it, a sprint, it's kind of like a sprint triathlon. Once you've done a half Ironman or Ironman, it's very unlikely you go back to a sprint. And adventure racing is the same way, because it's so short, it almost hurts more, because you go, it got to be funny. Especially, we raced a lot of 12 and 24-hour categories, and it got to a point where racing a 6 or 12-hour is just full tilt. You're going as hard as you possibly can. There's no like level 2. You're going full out, because 24 hours is where you have to back it off. But 6 to 12 is like a short training. It was just no big deal. And it was really weird how that kind of, your mindset shifted. Where in the beginning, I'm like, man, it's kind of like you just said. I was like, man, that's 6 hours. This is crazy. But after a while, it was like, yeah, that's no big deal. It's so short. It's not even worth it. So yeah. It's weird. It's all relative.
And it's funny that you say that, because I've had, a few conversations with triathletes, and the sprint race hurts just as much as the half Ironman race does, because the half Ironman, you're pacing yourself, but you could be out there for, like you said, 6 or so hours. The sprint race, you may only be out there for an hour, but you are literally going for 1 hour straight as hard as you possibly can.
Exactly. So. Yeah, sprints are brutal. Yeah. I mean, they're. I've only done a couple of them, and a couple of them on even well, it was like an Olympic relay is really what it was. It was like, I guess, where you do a leg, and we do it down at Rocky Point in Mexico. And it was incredible because, like, I always did the bike legs. That's what I was stronger at. And we had a buddy to do run and a buddy to do swim. And so consequently, you would go as hard as humanly possible for that time because you're only out there for, 24 miles on the bike. It's a quick day. But yeah, the sprints are the same thing. They're brutally hard because you have to go. You feel like you have to go so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're living in Arizona at this time, and I mean, I don't have any facts and figures in front of me, but if I had to guess, Ironman Arizona is probably. I do know that it's one of the most popular Ironman races.
Yeah.
I'd have to say it's probably also one of the longest standing full Ironman races. So did you stumble upon Ironman racing, through mountain biking and kind of just because of the atmosphere that you were in?
Yeah, kind of. I actually had no desire to do Ironman. My teammate in adventure racing, Jack, this guy Jack London, he's still a great buddy of mine, and he's still overall a douchebag because he talked me into doing Ironman Arizona, and I did not want to at all. I had zero desire. I'm a guy who loves dirt more than anything on the planet. It's dirt is like my salsa. I love it. I just love it. But, I still remember, like, every time I'm in the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport and I walk past this bench, I remember sitting there arguing with him over the phone, like, I don't want to do Ironman Arizona. And he's like, come on, man, registration opens up here. And, like, tonight you got to sign up. It's great. It's a great accomplishment. And the only reason he talked me into it is that him and I both, we go out and we do these races, and we were doing great. I mean, we were on the podium a lot. We're almost always top 10. And we tell our families, like, yeah, we just raced this weekend. We did 38 hours, and we came in with some of the best teams in the country. We placed 10th, or we got first, and maybe it was a smaller race. And my family would be like, oh yeah, that's neat. Like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going wine tasting tonight. I'm like, okay, cool, nice freaking talk. So we did Ironman because it was something that life is for a lot of us is kind of a bucket list, right? And we had done, especially at that point, we'd probably already done at least 50 adventure races. I don't even know, 70 of it at that point. And so I was like, all right, well, what the heck, let's do it. So I thought this would be a fun bucket list to pick off, and I'll just do it once and call it good. And then I was curious to become better at swimming anyway. I always felt I was a good swimmer. I mean, I spent a lot of time in lakes and creeks and rivers doing things that probably should have killed me back as a kid, and I was always able to swim out of them. So I felt like I was a strong swimmer, but it was a big difference because I could barely swim like 200 yards straight in a swimming pool without stopping. And that's when you realize, like, this is a different element. And I got coaches for swim, bike, and run, and it was really cool. I learned an enormous about myself in 05 and 06 when I had these guys in AZ as my coaches. And I became a great swimmer, or not like a super great by anybody's standards. I swim an hour 20, in an Ironman, but to me it was great, and it ended up being a lot of fun. I did Soma half Ironman in 05 and AZ Ironman in 06, and then came back, did Soma again in like 2010, and then I did the first year Ironman St. George, which was ridiculous, in like 2010, 2012, something like that. And it really was a lot of fun. What I found with Ironman is that yes, I don't enjoy the sport as much because I find that I don't find as many people that are as jovial and fun as you do on dirt. It's a way more serious, 100% type A sport. That being said, not knocking any of them. It's just a different type of athlete, and it's a very individual sport. I mean, you spend all this time training by yourself, and then next thing you know, you go out on race day. Same thing. You pretty much you've got to bike by yourself. Swimming's obviously untalkable, and then on the run, everybody's kind of in a funk. It's just a shut up and dig mode. But crossing the finish line of an Ironman, I've cried both Ironmans I finished. It's something that I have finished way bigger races without near the emotional satisfaction that I have in Ironman. And I think it's because it is such an individual sport that you put in so much individual training and effort beforehand that you cross that finish line and you're just like kind of broken. So it's a different beast, for sure, but something I'm definitely proud of for doing.
And I think it's every triathlon, every distance. because whether I'm crossing the finish line on a sprint or I'm crossing the finish line on a half Ironman, I get that same emotional rush, knowing that, all the work that you put in leading up to it has paid off. And, especially on those days where you have a PR and you have a great race, you're right. I think it's so personal that you're just flooded with emotions when you see that finish line. That, and I would have to imagine that when you see the finish line of a full Ironman distance race, you're probably saying, thank God this is over.
100%. I mean, it's like, I remember finishing Ironman St. George, and, I even told myself, I'm like, not going to be emotional. I'm not going to be emotional. And I remember my wife was there at the finish line, and my friend Josie was there with her, and Justin, who had beat me, that we'd trained together. And I remember Beth's parents, my wife's parents, were on the phone, and they're like, Josh, how are you? And I was like, I'm good. I'm like, how are you guys doing though? Because I couldn't talk. I really needed them to talk for a little bit. I couldn't talk. I was just a wreck. Like, I'm okay. I mean, I don't know what it is about Ironman that just destroys you. It's just, and like I said, you do have to dig deep. At least I do. I've never been a great runner. I have to work to run. I'm a pretty good biker, but I can run really far, but I'm just not a great runner. And I think that's where, the sport's humbling, and even nutrition. I'm one that I've been very religious with how I practice my nutrition in races, and I'm generally flawless. I finish the race just as strong as I start them, as far as, just feeling like my body's at homeostasis from proper nutrition. But Ironman, freaking triathlons, man, I don't know what it is, but I have yet, both half Ironmans, both fulls, I finished with, I dry heaved one entire run on a half Ironman at Soma the first year, literally the whole entire 13.1 miles. When I crossed that finish line, I was to me like, dude, are you okay? You need to go to the hospital. I mean, I'm sure I looked horrible, but there's something about that sport. It seems to beat you up from every angle. Nutrition, just physical, mental. I mean, it's everywhere. It's a hard sport.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were training for these Ironmans and half Ironmans, you discovered an issue that you were having, and talk to me a little bit about what this issue was that you were having, and some of the ideas and or thoughts that were coming into your head while this was going on.
Yeah, so I've always hated handhelds and waist packs. Can't stand them. Even as far as the product portfolio, we do have a handheld now. It pained me to design this. But as far as the handhelds go, I just, like training for these runs, I just couldn't stand holding them. And the waist packs would squeeze your waist. They cause GI distress or just too hot. The bottles were either stable full or empty, but never in between. And it's like I bought every dang thing on the planet and was very frustrated. And then with packs, a lot of them were too hot and they were too heavy. Just moved around too much, would rub you raw on the shoulders, and had all these issues. So I in training, actually it was for Ironman St. George, the second Ironman I did. I was out running one day and I had this loop behind my house. This was at this point I lived in California, and I was running this 1 mile. It's a gravel loop behind my house, and I just stashed water bottle by the road, and that's how I would get my hydration. Well, one day I saw a coyote and I saw a homeless person walking down the street there off Imperial Highway in Anaheim Hills, and either way, whatever one, either the coyote peed on it, or the homeless guy drank from it, or peed on it, who knows what. But I did this loop, and as I came around, I took a drink from my bottle, and it was freaking disgusting. It tasted terrible. I don't know what it was, and I was like, man, this sucks. There's got to be a better freaking way. And then it was about 6 months later from that point. But that was the point that it settled in me that I needed to do something I'd thought about for a long period of time. And that is about making a pack that would be a bottle-based pack for Ironman that would mount up right behind your neck, right in between your shoulder blades, that would just ride really high. It just holds your bottle, your electrolytes, backup nutrition, keys, ID, and cash for the beer garden. I just wanted that in a pack. That's all I really wanted. And so I had this vision from all these years of adventure racing where you stare at your teammates' backs and you see their movement. And I just had noticed the upper shoulders don't hardly move at all. your center thoracic region moves quite a bit. Your lumbar region kind of goes in the circle, and hence the reason why all those areas are tricky to have a stable fluid there. Not to mention it's hot. So it's about 6 months after that Ironman was over, and shortly after my boy was born, where I was like, man, we got to figure out something for, one of us has to quit our day jobs and have something a little more normal. And I went in the garage one night, and I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to destroy a pack here in a second. I think I have an idea. And she's like, all right, whatever. And I go in the garage, and I destroyed a bottle-based fanny pack, a tie-down strap for the back of my truck, and this old piece of a gun holster where I needed a piece to mount behind my shoulder blades. And I kind of sewed this crude contraption together, and I went for a little half-mile jog. And I came back, and I told my wife, I was like, you know what? Tonight we're going to start a company. It's probably going to cost $50,000. We're going to make a backpack. And worst case scenario, we're going to have 2 backpacks worth $25,000 each, perfectly designed for us. And best case scenario, you can run it, and we'll see what happens. and I had a 3-month-old at the time, and my wife was like, neither one of us had slept in 3 months. So she's like, whatever, do what you want. And then, so we ended up starting Orange Mud right then and there.
And you were at the time in a career in like the medical device industry. So was there any knowledge from that industry that you could kind of pull and put this idea into something that was more tangible? Were there any resources that you could pull? Did that help you, essentially?
Man, I wish. Yeah, I spent 15 years in the medical device industry and manufacturing. Basically a big machine shop. That's what we were. And 170 people. We made all sorts of spinal implants, shoulder implants, knee, hips. I always tell people I made the implants that you don't want in your body, but you need, really. And it was awesome. We learned how to, our skill was to take all our, customers' designs and make them, from CAD drawings and 3D models. And you learn how to, work with customers to make their designs better, because in the end, we were manufacturers. We knew how to manufacture things. They knew how to design them, but we often knew how to manufacture them to make them repeatable and consistent, better quality. And so it was a lot of working with our customers to make their designs better. So from that perspective, I always tell people, like, I'm not the guy that's going to go paint a Picasso. It's just not me. I see things as this is how they should be, and I believe they can be better. And that's what I excel at, is making something better. But I guess there's always the yin and the yang. I guess there's always a starting point for the most part for everything. But I think that's where that career has helped a lot. Is that it was every day I worked with thousands and thousands of engineers on helping to make their designs better, which is really related well to our business. But from a material sourcing, from a manufacturing, 100% polar opposites. We dealt with physical, rod and sheets of plastics and metals to turn them into widgets to improve your life, or put a shuttle into space, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of different aspects of that business. So going into this, the manufacturing side was huge, but my networks are basically, for the most part, all pretty useless. Because it was just a different area, totally separate. It's like truly so similar. It's the apple and orange effect. They're so similar, but they're so different. But a buddy of mine, Joe Emery, he kind of hit me up one day. He used to work for me, actually, and he's like, hey, man, I know you're trying to do Orange Mud. My parents used to be in sewing. I got this buddy who can probably help you out, and with some prototypes. And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome, because I couldn't find anybody besides a local seamstress, and she was sweet, she was nice, but she was good at making wedding dresses, which was, again, a polar opposite. It's an apple and an orange to backpacks. And he hooked me up with his buddy Mike, and I hit him up. I'm like, hey man, can you help me make a backpack? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So he was this guy Mike. He was the one that was a big turning point for me, where I was able to actually make a legitimate product that looked legitimate, rather than my crude, very just basically, I guess, rednecky design that I had kind of put together with farm boy logic. So that was the key turning point. I guess it was one connection from the industry, and then from there on, it was simple, dig and make it happen. I guess it was back to that Kansas farmer or country boy logic of You just have to make it work. And I just started researching and finding material suppliers and growing from there.
And how many prototypes did you go through before you had your ready to launch product?
So I used to know all these because I always would count them. But I'm pretty sure the first one was 18. It was either 18 or 22 prototypes before we went live. One of the two on that first one. But yeah, it was a lot of prototypes. In each prototype, mind you, might have 50 variations. And some may have only had one subtle change, the thread color. There's these little things. Like right now, a major flagship of our brand is the bright orange thread on black. We use that all throughout our brand, where that happened by mistake. It was supposed to be black with this real subtle orange in the beginning. And my plan, so we started in January 2012, and it took 10 months of prototyping. And my first exhibit was Half Ironman Arizona. My second was Ironman Arizona. So that was October, then November back then. And I told my factory, which I had found through my prototyper, I was like, okay, cool. That thread, this whole package looks good. Please build. And that's kind of the way it works in backpacks. You basically have a prototype. You sign off on that prototype sample, and that becomes your production sample, and you go to build. Well, so I go back and I pick up my packs right before I'm flying out to Arizona or driving out to Arizona in the morning. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, what in the world did you guys do? Like this orange thread is way too bright. No one's going to buy this. And they're like, yeah, well, and this guy, I'm glad we used him because it was great, but I was ready to strangle them on a daily basis because he was like, yeah, well, I don't know. It's just this one's more bright orange. I was ready to kill him. I was so freaking mad. And I was like, well, I guess we'll just see what happens. So we went to the expo. And sure enough, everybody wanted the black with orange stitch. And my wife was flying out the next day to come help at the expo. And I called her. I'm like, go back down there and pick up more than black with orange stitch. So they should have them done today. And their vibrant orange stitch. And it's what people want. But again, at the time, I thought it was going to be way too vibrant. So it's funny. There's been a lot of our successes have happened from accidents.
And what was it like to see your final prototype, the one that you approved for production prior to Arizona? What was it like seeing that, knowing that it came from a gun holster, haphazard, like garage project?
It was awesome. Yeah, I mean it was. You still, I bet I felt hack for like the first 2 or 3 years of our business before I felt like, yeah, you know what, I'm actually designing packs. This is my job. This is me now. I felt like it was, I don't know. It was very special. It was extremely exciting, but I also felt like, I don't know. I just felt like, I don't know if I'm the guy, it was my own ignorance, right? I mean, it's when you just expect there's a whole bunch of experts out there all over, right? That's what they do for a living. And I could tell, like, the factory's like, so where's your patterns? I'm like, oh, I don't really have patterns. Can you build it from this sample? And they're like, oh, okay, well, we can do that. And, that slowed production. And there's just things I didn't know. Like, to me, when I first started trying to find suppliers, I hit up my engineering buddies. I'm like, hey, can you put this in CAD for me? And they're like, this is kind of tricky. This isn't really what we do. We can design something that's a pacemaker, but like this is just a way different type of complication. And then, when I hit up the manufacturers, I'm like, well, do you prefer Pro E or SolidWorks, or like what CAD program do you prefer? And they looked at me like I was speaking Chinese, and I was like, well, what? And they're like, well, generally we make from paper patterns. I laughed. I'm like, wow, that's weird. I'm like, you repeat all these widgets from paper patterns? That's crazy. But that is this industry. It's very far from being a high-tech industry. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, it's a different type of manufacturing. It's a different type of skill. It's a different type of labor. And honestly, it simplifies things. It's probably a lot easier in many ways to use paper than it would be from CAD. But yeah, so it's definitely been a whole learning experience from start to finish, and it's ongoing. But but yeah, seeing your first product is amazing. But like I said, I think it took a while to feel like I actually knew maybe I'm doing something right.
And so when you were doing all of this and all this research and trying to find manufacturers and trying to find sources for different materials and all of this, you were still working full time?
Yeah, very full time. Yeah, like 80 hours a week type of full time to more. So I was vice president of a pretty big company, and I ran, I worked a lot of hours as is on a daily basis. And again, I had a 3-month-old. So, basically I'd go to work and, with that many people working for me, it was crazy. And you come home at the end of the day and 7 or 8 o'clock at night, which is pretty much my normal deal, and eat dinner real quick with my wife and my little boy Jax. And then, I'd immediately be like, all right, cool, I'm going upstairs. And I go up and shut the door in my office and work till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. Then I get back the next day and start with coffee and do it all again. And then the weekends, I always worked every weekend for the first few years. So it was a solid 7-day a week for the first 3-4 years maybe. But once I finally quit the day job, I was able to, back it off a little bit and maintain sanity.
Right. And so, I mean, we don't have to get into the particulars, but I'm assuming as a vice president of a medical device company that is making these products, for knee replacements and hip replacements and everything, at that point you were probably doing well for yourself. And so was the whole original Orange Mud funded by you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. My grandpa, he got me investing when I was 19. Okay. And that was invaluable. So that's a lot of how Orange Mud was funded, was from and learning from him to invest. And so over the years, that was always instilled in me. And between just simple taken from my paycheck, not to mention investments, that's how we were able to start Orange Mud. And if I hadn't done that, I've told a lot of people, they have these ideas and starting a company. I'm like, look, making products is super easy. It's not a problem. Anybody can make products. I firmly believe that you've got to have the cash to get a company off the ground. It's 100% of the ball game. And it's 100% of the reason why I stayed working for as long as I did, despite like mad stress, not just work, but even personal. That was hard on my wife. It was hard on our relationship to be, to work for me, just to be like, look, if you want this success of our business to go, if you want this to work, I have to do this. And it was just brutal. I mean, it was brutal to put in them kind of hours, especially with a little baby at home. But yeah, I mean, it's you got to have the cash to be able to make it work. And honestly, if I hadn't stayed working, could I have maybe burnt through all of our savings? Maybe. I maybe could have still pulled it off. But that was instrumental to be able to allow my disposable income and investments to be able to help fund and get Orange Mud off the ground in a way that made sense.
And I would have to imagine that also taught you how to reinvest into Orange Mud as opposed to starting to pull a salary or a paycheck or, blowing money too early on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I started paying my wife maybe 2 years ago. She quit her day job, I think 4.5 years ago, roughly. And I quit mine, is it 2.5 or 3.5 years ago now? I think 3.5. But I didn't actually start paying myself until the end of 2016. 3 days before the end of the year. My accountant's like, maybe you should pay yourself a little bit this year. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, I guess so. That was the first time. It was December 28th. And he's like, seriously, you should really consider it. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But even my wife, I didn't pay her very much. And it was, no offense to her, it wasn't anything like that. It was just a matter of, we were nervous. So I didn't want to pay money because you're not paying more in tax. For the most part, we were losing money there in the beginning. So it's like, I'm only paying her money out of our own money to make it go. So it was kind of one of them kind of chicken or the egg type of things. And tax wise, it just made more sense just to let the business grow and start cash flowing itself. And that was my number one goal, was cash flow. And so it was was 3 years in when we were finally cash flowing, and in that year, the year I quit my day job. So yeah, I guess it's been 3.5. The year I quit my day job, that year the business net. It's just net profit, but it net profited $24,000, and that's when I quit. And my wife was like, "So okay, so you're gonna quit your job?" And I've already quit my job. She was a lawyer, and I was like, "So I quit my job, and you're gonna quit your job, but how much did we make this year?" I was like, well, technically the business netted 24,000, but we're negative cash flow in like 70 because of inventory purchases. so she's like, and how is this going to work? And I'm like, well, it's going to work. Not 100% sure, but I think it's going to work. And I just knew it needed focus. It's easy, as any business owner knows. It's easy to spend money. You have money, like you set aside your first money to start your business. So like, cool, let's make shirts and let's make hats and business cards and magnets and all these things that are cool, but they're completely irrelevant and probably don't make you any money whatsoever. And you're probably spending more on it because you don't know where to buy them from properly in the beginning. And my God, some of the money I wasted in the beginning, and I was conservative, but even so, I wasted money on stupid things at the beginning. And at that point, when I finally quit my day job, I felt like I was getting my ducks in a row. My manufacturing resources were well understood. I started to understand how to build things better myself, to get better, to reduce my prototype time to market. There's just so many different advantages I started figuring out, that I felt it was time that I took the leap, because I could grow our business exponentially faster. But I'm not going to lie. I was scared to death that day, and told her today we went from the top percent to the bottom in the same day.
And did you still, was it just Jax at that point?
Yeah. My daughter, Lexi, she wasn't born for another year and a half. Between when I quit, it was about a year. A year, 6 months later, I think, when she was born after I quit. 4 months later. Yeah, I guess I could just do the math from months. Yeah, so it was 4 months later is when she was born. So yeah, then I had 2 itty bitty little kids. So yeah, that was scary, but good times.
Now, so talk to me.
Crazy.
Talk to me a little bit about like when Orange Mud really started to take off. Did you see it taking off before you went full time, or did it really start to take off when you went full time?
Yeah. No, it was, we were doing good and we were getting good traction before I quit. But it was definitely not long after that where I had way more time to invest. At the time, we really significantly grew thanks to Facebook advertising. That was a big one. And I buried myself in Facebook advertising. I had buried myself in it before I quit my day job, but I really buried myself once I was doing this full time. That's all I lived and breathed on a daily basis, and it was very valuable in the beginning. Now Facebook is challenging. We still spend a lot of money in it, but it's way harder to get an ROI than it used to be. But yeah, that, and then like I kept telling my wife in the beginning that we needed 10 products before I felt we could have a successful business that we could both live on. And when I quit, we had 14, and it still was just barely enough. We kind of looked at it as like, gosh, can we sell 10,000 backpacks or whatever? You start thinking like, God, that's a lot of backpacks. But if we make, these different layers of products, these different types of products, we can kind of grow smarter and safer and even mitigate risk. In the beginning, I was just as scared of, somebody coming suing us for whatever reason. For maybe our Hydro Quiver pack would get sued, and then what? Maybe we're completely out of the game. But so by building our brand into different categories of products, we began to diversify our portfolio, and that's really what, for me, made me a lot more comfortable about where our business was. Because even if I had to kill a product for whatever legality reason, between the patent trolls and God only knows what else is out there, I still am always worried about that. Fortunately, knock on wood, everything's been okay. But it's that type of stuff that I was petrified about. But all those things I was able to go so more full tilt on once I was able to commit full time.
Now, in committing full time, talk to me about one of your biggest mistakes or learning experiences when you decided to go full time?
Yeah, I think probably it's one of the biggest ones, and I almost feel bad saying it, is that, when I started this, my background, again, manufacturing, all in the U.S., saving people's lives, defense, all kinds of awesome stuff, and I really wanted to make it all in the U.S. That was the whole focal point, and from the very beginning. And then as our business started to scale, the U.S. side, it was great. Honestly, we found a great manufacturer in L.A. I've got nothing bad to say about them. They were fantastic. We had two great manufacturers there, and they were great manufacturing partners. But the problem was, how do we scale our business? And I'll never forget a customer at a. I'll just say it's a customer. They're a big company that wanted to buy our transition wrap product. And I remember the guy telling me, when I told him they were made in the U.S., he's like, "Josh, you're naive and an idiot if you think anybody cares." And I wanted to tell the guy, I'm like, you know what? Freaking pound sand, man. It ticked me off. But at the same time, I kind of got it. But I really felt like making things in the U.S., people are going to care. And honestly, the one thing that I will tell people is that there is a silent percentage that does. But for the most part, it purely comes down to price. It's more of like, if you're considering an orange mud pack or a nether pack, and if you're just dead set, like, I don't know which one I want, and the other one's cheaper, you're probably going to buy that. If you see it's made in the U.S., but mine costs $150 and the other one's $120, no one's going to pay. Very few people will pay extra. And so what really became evident as a challenge to our business model was like our international growth. We had a lot of international interest, but I didn't have any margin to give them. It just wasn't there, because they expect to get a lower purchase cost than retailers do in the U.S. Because obviously they've got duties and shipping and all these other challenges. And this is standard practice in the industry. They get a bigger discount. Well, we couldn't give a bigger discount. As is, we were pretty much selling at cost to our retail stores. So that wasn't good either. Here, we're growing at retail, but it's not exactly a good thing. So we began to move some manufacturing. One of our plants in LA had a sister plant in Tecate, so in Mexico. So we moved it down to a lot of manufacturing there. And I caught a little flack for it, but very little. Not as much as I had expected, given how we built our business, or the mantra. But I think I was the only one that really cared that much about it. And going there, it did save a good chunk, but it was problematic. And again, people are always like, you should make things in the U.S. I'm like, okay, why? And, well, because it's better. I'm like, kind of, but there's things that the U.S. just doesn't do well because it isn't here. Manufacturing isn't here. Like, if all space shuttles are made in, I don't know, Poland, maybe it's best that space shuttles stay made in Poland, because that's where space shuttles are made. And that's kind of that same type of scenario with these packs, is that Mexico was good with certain types of packs, but not the fine level of detail that our packs made. And even in the U.S., they're great. If you want military grade stuff, medical grade stuff, it's one reason why our stuff is built so well, is because we have a factory. That's what they did. We were the oddball in commercial, but they didn't specialize in making all these itty bitty little widgets like a lot of your overseas factories do. So when I finally looked at an overseas factory, because we were scaling and doing really a lot of growth, when I first saw the cost delta, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, here we have been just struggling trying to make this brand grow, yet the margins just aren't working. Now I understood all of a sudden why. There's a reason people go overseas, because the margins, just the reality is, it is a cheaper manufacturing over there. Not only that, the materials, all the materials you're buying in the U.S., you're probably buying them from somebody that's sourced it from overseas anyway. So you're using overseas materials. Labor is always, there's a lot of questionable labor. Not at our factories, they're pretty legit. But for anybody that's using a lot of sewing factories in the U.S., don't let anybody lie to you. The fact is, there's a lot of illegal labor that's working there. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I make it in the U.S., but there's a good chance there could be illegal labor anyway. So does that make me morally right or wrong to move it overseas versus keeping it here with illegal labor? It's like these weird these weird challenges that you go through mentally in your head, where it's just a mess. But long story short, we started in the U.S. I'm proud we did. I'm proud we spent as much as we did in the U.S. economy investing in it. But when I looked at what we could do by going overseas, by buying our materials direct, way more direct over there, at least eliminating 2, 3, 4 layers of middlemen distributors, that increased my cost of goods from still buying the same stuff from overseas, except I could improve upon it and get the cost down. My labor quality was just unbelievable. I can't believe how much we've increased our quality. That was a shocker more than anything. Because that's what they do. They build these type of widgets. When you go to the right place, that's what they specialize in. The quality it's just mind numbing. And it's been definitely our biggest eye opener of going overseas is, wow, we can step up quality even more than we already had. I didn't even think that was possible. And then the access to, I have a 70-person prototype team that I can send to right now. I can get prototypes in 2 weeks, DHL to my door. And that wouldn't happen in the U.S. because they didn't have the team size to do that. The cost in the U.S. is just too expensive. So yeah, one of my biggest learning curves was sadly that made in the U.S. is amazing, and I love it. I try to support as much as humanly possible. I'm nerdy about buying gas in my own zip code, even for my car. But at the same time, you hit a point where you want a successful business, or do you want to just limp along and hope you can grow it and make it here? And unfortunately, that meant we had to go overseas.
Yeah. And so now you're in full blown production. You were doing some sales online and some retail. So what was it like to walk into a retail store and see an orange mud pack for sale in that retail store for the first time?
Yeah, it's probably, honestly, it's about the same now. Even when I go in, when I see them in stores, it's still pretty freaking awesome. I was in a store the other day and I don't know, I guess I should have known they had them there. I don't know what I was thinking, but when I saw them all displayed, I'm like, wow, you guys, they just displayed them better than some other stores had. And I was like, that is freaking cool. I'm like, we got to take a picture of this. So no, it's amazing. It's sellers was amazing because we had so much one-on-one contact. A lot of people would give feedback and just give us. It's amazing. We built a brand that has a very strong consumer tie. So that alone was amazing. And then to add that retail layer and see that I have my product for sale here was amazing. But I tell you what's more amazing was I remember my cousin. She was out in I think it was in Salina. Yeah, it was in Salina. At a shopping mall out there, and she was like, "Hey, Josh, your products are carried in the store. I just was walking by it. I saw it in the window." I'm like, and she sent me the picture. That was probably more cool than me even seeing them in the store. Just to see that, like, random stumble upon an orange mud product in Western Kansas. It was just random.
And would you say that seeing your product in the store for the first time, the amount of emotion, or even getting that picture, the amount of emotion that you are overcome with is similar to that same emotion that you had crossing the Ironman finish line 2 times? Or would you say that this is even more?
It's interesting. It's to me, sometimes you work so hard on something that once you finally have the finished result, it's almost not near as exciting, and it's weird like that. And it's kind of a little bit hard to explain, but I guess, but like seeing it at retail, it's like being in the device industry, for example. I'd get these big purchase orders and it was so cool. Like, wow, cool. We got this $4 million project and it was so neat. But then you're like, oh, now we have to build it. And then we have to ship it, and then we have to get paid for it. And there's all these more phases, and so it's like you hardly ever get to celebrate. So for me, don't get me wrong, it was amazing, but what was more amazing were seeing people out randomly on the street running with my pack, because because again, it's almost like the retail side, again, awesome, but it's different to see someone that says, hey, like I see him running on the street and I say, hey, where'd you get that pack? Oh yeah, I bought it at, Fleet Feet, Nashville. I'm like, oh, cool. And it's just, that's where it means more to me than anything. And even to this day, this week, I was on a bike ride 2 days ago and biking down heading out to these gravel roads out here by my house. And this guy was running down the path in front of me wearing my new version 2 endurance pack. And I pulled up next to him like, hey man, how do you like that pack? He's like, oh dude, it's great. I bought it from a little company over here in Castle Rock. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy. That's my pack. I designed it. And he's like, oh, cool, man. He's like, yeah, I've been meaning to buy your 12 liter. And it was, to me, that was so cool to have that experience with someone that I don't know. It just is random. And before he even said, before I even said who I was, to say how much he loves it already, that is, and that's happened a lot to me. Anytime I'm out, every time I see someone wearing one of our packs, I always ask him, what do you think of that pack? And to hear people, say, dude, this thing is amazing. I've never had, fortunately, I've never had anybody say this thing sucks, but it's that never gets old. Last year, Leadville Marathon or Leadville 100-mile run, 5-6 miles into it in the dark. We started at 4:30 in the morning. And there was a guy, right ahead of me wearing my best pack 2, and then right ahead of him wearing the double barrel. And then in between them was another guy wearing a competitor's pack. And that guy in between them looked over at both of them. And our packs are pretty obvious because you have these big old bottles on your back. And that guy went over to the first guy with the BP2 and said, hey man, do you like that pack? And again, I just get to listen. And I mean, I felt like some, like we were talking about earlier, I felt like a creepy dude in the basement there. I was like, I'm just listening in. And the guy's like, dude, this thing, he's like, you know what? I didn't know what I'd think about it because it's such a different look and fit. But he's like, I love this thing. I bought it 2 years ago. I've been running with it nonstop, and it's just freaking amazing. And then the guy in front of him is like, yeah, dude, nice pack. He's like, yeah, this thing's amazing. You should try it. It's totally weird. But once you get used to it, it's freaking amazing. And I was just like, I went up to him afterwards, both. I'm like, hey, I just want to say I love you both. This is awesome. But that, to me, it's never got old. It's the same level of excitement every single time I see someone in the wild with one of our packs.
And, I mean, like you were saying, it has to feel good for people to promote your product and tell others how amazing the product is. And even when you go up to them for the first time and you say, hey, do you like that pack? What are your thoughts on that? Where'd you get it? This and that. And they have no idea, who you are. So that they're going to give you honest feedback on the products. And that's, I mean, you can't really put a price on that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and like this week or last week, a girl did this gear vest, or used our gear vest in her first ultra. It was I think it was a 50K that she did, or 50 miler, one of the two. And that's amazing. She's posting pictures left and right. Josh, your pack's awesome. This was great. And for me to be able to share a smidgen of someone's awesome experience on doing something that's a huge accomplishment to them, and our pack was able to compliment them while they're doing it, that is the biggest reward you can possibly imagine. If you go on Instagram, you search #OrangeMud, there's probably over 50,000. Last week I looked, it was 49,000 hashtags. People have tagged us there. And it's amazing. You go through and you see all these people that are smiling and having a blast on the trails, playing in the dirt or on the road, just enjoying themselves. And I mean, how cool is that? Or last week, if you look on our Instagram, Mont, he's actually one of our ambassadors now in Thailand. He proposed at the end of a race wearing all of our gear to his girlfriend, or now fiance, wearing our gear. And we got to be a part of that. How cool is that? Like, someone actually wore our gear during an engagement. I mean, you can't get better than that. I think that's the best ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So
yeah, it's crazy.
I do have one final question that I would like to ask you, and I kind of like to provide some context prior to asking this question. But The premise of the Do It For Yourself podcast is that people are doing something for themselves. And the biggest caveat that I like to put out there in regards to that is you're not doing something selfishly for yourself. You're doing something because you want to do it. For example, you're going for a run for the first time because you want to go for a run, not because you have a coach yelling at you that you need to run. It's time to do sprints, because we lost that game or you missed that pass or you didn't get that ground ball, whatever the case may be. So my question for you is, after having this very successful career, leaving this very successful career, building this company, what is your number one tip or piece of advice for someone who wants to do it for themselves, but they haven't started yet?
Well, I would say build out a roadmap of how you're going to get there and to success, how you're going to get to success, knowing that there's a great chance it's going to be very, very different. We started our business based upon Ironman. When I was at Ironman Arizona and Half Ironman Arizona selling my packs, I kept asking each person, what's your main sport? And almost every single one of them said, I do Ironman for fun. I'm actually an ultra runner. And that's what got us, we made a big pivot and said, okay, well, I guess we should research this a little bit. So initially we thought we were going to be this triathlete focused company. And we had a quick pivot, not necessarily because we wanted to ignore triathlon. We still have done well there, but we have really become a very big trail running company. And then now mountain biking, because I love mountain biking. So for me, we had a plan of what we were going to do and how we were going to grow, but it was definitely very loose. And we knew that going into it, that we're probably going to learn as we go. But I spelled out, where are my manufacturing resources? How am I going to produce my product? How will I sell my product? And then each one of those channels online. Okay, well, where do I start a website? What social media should I do? Because you got to figure a lot of these things out. Because there's a lot of friggin' nasty people out there. As soon as you register your business, there's people that prey on that, and they'll go and they'll register your social media handles, so you have to buy them. I mean, there's crazy stuff like this. So just go through and think through your mechanisms of distribution, manufacturing, quality, finance alone. My first year, shame on me, and I'm a pretty big financial nerd. I costed out every backpack to the penny, and it's because that's what I was used to doing in my day job. We were costing out multi-million-dollar projects. I didn't realize you don't need to cost out, packs that are $85, every single widget on every single sale. So at the end of that first year, we fortunately only sold $15,000 or something like that. I forget that first year. My 80 hours I invested in accounting on my own side before I sent it to my CPA, and then he dismissed it in 2 seconds. It's okay, cool. This is all I need. Just this. Get a bookkeeper that knows what's going on. So get your resources in place. Make sure you chat with everybody and at least get an idea. Get an idea from your bookkeeper. What do you need from me? Because honestly, that took way more of my time away that first year than probably anything else did. And it was stupid. I should have involved a bookkeeper or CPA in the beginning to make sure I knew what I was doing right. And then again, find your people that can be a good resource to you, and just ask for the free help. Be mindful of their time. But I wish I knew more people. Unfortunately, I didn't have that many resources that were in this space. But I wish I would have asked maybe a little more questions in the beginning that first year, because it probably would have made my life a lot easier. So basically, ask questions. I mean, that's the reality. Get a roadmap and ask a lot of questions. Yeah. It's a brutal start, but it's a lot of fun once you get it going.
And I think that goes with anything. I mean, it goes with, launching in a triathlon, running your first marathon, doing an ultra, launching a business. Across the board, just have a plan, start, and ask questions along the way. there is somebody else out there who has done what you're trying to do, and they've made the mistakes already, and they can help you essentially shorten and minimize some of the mistakes at least along the way.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, even just like joining your local entrepreneur groups, clubs. I did have a few good breaks from American Express Open in the beginning. That was amazing for me. I haven't looked at it for a while, to be honest, but it was an amazing resource. But yeah, find some of those local clubs that you got to find somebody that's a parallel in your industry. Someone that isn't necessarily a competitor, but someone that is in parallel that can help you out. I just see so many people struggle that I never mind helping. I mean, I have given away way too much of my time for free, but at the same time, I feel it's good karma because I feel it. Man, I sure wish I knew somebody when I was starting out because it's hard to know where to start. What website do you use? Like what website, like e-com platform do you use? That's a big one. I see people try to do stuff out of WordPress and do all these crazy things. It's like, nah, just use Shopify. It's easy. You're quick to market. And 5 years from now, change it up if you want to go super crazy. But there's just so many basic things that like I could literally put it all in like a short templated document. Here's how to start a business, and that's at least that would have saved me probably 6 months of time in the beginning. So yeah, find people that are in parallel and just ask them, walk me through a few key steps on what I need to do to get my product from here to here, and how to sell it, and what some of your successes, and you'll go a lot further, a lot quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Josh. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for jumping on with me here tonight. I know it's the afternoon where you are, but I'm sure it's probably almost dinner time for you where you are. So I'm gonna let you get going. But I do really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with me and talking about starting Orange Mud and everything that has gone into that. And I must say that I do really admire the dedication that you put forth to Orange Mud and getting that started, especially in the very beginning, where you were working a very successful job, working very long hours, and it would have been very easy for you to hang that gun holster makeshift belt up in the garage and just go right back to the medical sales. So my hat's off to you on that one. And I do wish you much continued success, with Orange Mud.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on, and you got a really cool podcast, really inspirational podcast. So keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. Yes, thank you. So that is it for this evening. And again, I just want to say thank you, Josh. And who knows what's going to happen down the road. But we could be definitely reconnecting sometime soon with your drive and passion for this business, because I'm sure that things are only going to keep going.
That's the plan. Yeah, year 6. We'll be selling we started in January 2012, but October 27th will be 6 years. So I celebrate 2 birthdays, which is fun. So October 27th is when we officially launched at Soma Half Ironman, and it's so cool. Like October means more to me than January, because there's always that like weird time in the development and starting a company. It's not always, it's not like a full-time deal by any stretch, but yeah, this year, October 27th is going to be super exciting, and yeah, every day forward. It's always a good one.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Josh, and I definitely look forward to catching up with you soon.
You got it, brother. All right, thanks, man.
My friends, what did you think? For me, it was another one of those conversations, and it seems like these conversations are happening more and more, where we start the interview, we get to talking, and we just completely lose track of time. And I always tell people that I like to chat for about an hour, and I found recently that I'm going well over that hour. So I do want to say thank you to Josh for being so flexible and taking a little bit extra time to talk with me about Orange Mud and the launch of that company. And I do apologize that we went a little bit over the time there. But again, I'm going to try and keep this close short because I want to try and keep these podcasts, somewhere between an hour and a half for right now. So just want to give a quick thanks to Josh for coming on, and also a quick thanks to you for listening to this episode and sharing some time with us here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. And I really look forward to seeing you next week.